Welcome back to part 2 of making homemade wine with fresh strawberries. So, if you saw the first video, thanks for coming back. So today I'm going to stop the fermentation process completely. We're going to do some sweetening, and after sweetening we'll bottle it, and then this wine will be done and ready to age. So this wine's been sitting for about 4 weeks after the primary fermentation. You can see here on the bottom everything is settled out, and the wine itself is actually pretty clear. You can see through the glass. So now I can siphon this off. We'll siphon it into the bucket and then add some potassium sorbate, which will kill off all the yeast and stop the fermentation process. Then we can taste it and sweeten it. A couple things to remember when you're doing this. Make sure you don't move it around real quick or get it stirred up where the sediment's going to come back up into the wine, so move it real slow. We'll take the airlocks off gently and then start to siphon this out into the bucket. One thing to remember when you siphon this off is to make sure you don't get down into the sediment. So if you get this sediment back into your wine, then you could have some floaties hanging around, or you could run the risk of having a little bit different taste. So in the bucket now we have about a little over 4 gallons. Naturally I'm going to try it first. So we'll try it and then we'll do something called degassing it. Alright, I got a little bit out here in a glass. You can see it's pretty clear. It's not as dark red as it looks in the bucket once you get it into a glass, but by tasting it you can see both how much carbonation is left in it, and that's what the degassing will do, is get the carbonation out. And you can also get an idea on how much you're going to have to sweeten it. So and actually I don't think it's got a whole lot of gas in it, so the carbon dioxide that's left over, we'll get a little bit of that left out with this drill that has this whipping tool on it, and this will help stir it up real quick and get the gas out. And then we'll prep it to get ready for sweetening. So I'll do this on and off for about 10 or 15 minutes, and you can kind of see as the bubbles come up, you'll start and stop for about a minute or so each time. And as you whip this, you'll get, it almost sounds like you're opening a can of pop. It'll be real fizzy. So once that starts getting less and less, you know that you've got most of the gas out, and then you can get ready for the next step. Alright, so I've done this on and off for about 15 minutes. I've got most of the CO2 out. So you can actually taste the difference after you do that. You'll notice it goes from like a champagne fizziness down to like more of a wine, like you want it. So after I do that, I'm going to add half a teaspoon per gallon of potassium sorbate, and this stabilizes. So what this does is it kills off any of the remaining yeast that's left, and this will make sure that fermentation does not start back up when you sweeten, if you decide to do so. So I have about 4 gallons. I'll do 4 half teaspoons or 2 teaspoons, and then I can stir that in with the wine whip, and then we will be ready to put it back in the carboys. And also, after the potassium sorbate, we'll put 4 more Campden tabs in, just to help make sure that we have no bacteria or germs left in our wine. So just like we did at the beginning, we'll crush up 4 of these tablets, put them in the wine and stir it in, and that will be it for the Campden tabs. And now we can stir that in with the wine whip. Now that we've added this potassium sorbate and the Campden tabs, I'm going to put everything back into the carboys, let it sit for a few days before we sweeten it. So we'll siphon this in here and we'll fill these back up. So now it's racked back into the carboys. If you remember, you can see we lost probably third of a gallon or so from the sediment and everything that we left behind. So everything's back in here, airlocked, and I'm gonna let the potassium sorbate sit for a few days. You don't have to, I don't think, but just it never hurts. So in about 2 or 3 days, I'll come back and I'm gonna sweeten this to taste, and then it will be ready to bottle. So I'll see you in a few days. All right, it's 2 days later, and we've let the potassium sorbate work, and it's killed off all the yeast. And now I'm gonna dump it all in a bucket and sweeten it to taste. So we can just dump it in. We don't have to siphon it off this time since nothing's settled out. So we'll dump it in the bucket and then start adding simple sugar to taste and see if we can get it where we want it. Alright, so last year when I did this, I used about 10 tablespoons of simple syrup per gallon. And simple syrup that I made was just 1 cup of water and 1 cup of sugar dissolved in it. So, like I said, last year I used 10 tablespoons per gallon, but I thought after it aged a little bit, I thought it needed to be a little sweeter. So this year I'm going to put about 12 tablespoons per gallon and stir it up and try that first. And then if we need to add more, we can add more. So I already dissolved this up. It's just simple syrup, like I said. 1 cup to 1 cup for sugar and water. So I'll count these out, stir it in, and see how it tastes. And we'll stir that in. And this is the part where it gets a little dangerous, because you're going to keep tasting wine and you might start getting a little too much to drink. So you got to be careful, especially if it's in the morning. Now I'll take a little sample. Pretty good, but I think it needs a little more. So I started off with 10 per gallon. Like I said, I'm going to go to 12. So I'm going to add a little bit more, see how it tastes. Alright, so I went up to 12 tablespoons per gallon. And try it again. Well, I think it still needs a little more. So we just got to keep trying and drinking. Alright, so this next test is going to be at 14 tablespoons per gallon of simple syrup. Well, I think I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon per gallon, and I'm going to stop at that. So it's starting to get pretty sweet. It's got a little bit of a dry kick, or dryness to it, but it's a lot sweeter than it was. Alright, this should be the last test. See if we like it. So I think I'm going to stop at that. So that was 15 tablespoons per gallon. And now we'll just siphon it back into the carboys. Wait a week, and then in that week you'll make sure that fermentation doesn't start back up. Because if you bottle it and fermentation starts back up, then you're going to have a mess, because it'll blow the corks off and you're going to have wine everywhere. So we'll let this sit for a week after I siphon it back into the carboys, and then we'll check back in as I bottle it and cork it, and this wine will be done. See ya in 1 week. Alright, the last step is here. It's been about a week. The fermentation hasn't started back up, so after we sweetened it, so the potassium sorbate worked. The yeast is done, it's gone, and now we're ready to bottle. So I have about 15 bottles down here, and we'll bottle as much of this as we can, and then save a little back to drink on, obviously. But so we'll get this bottled up and then cork it, and that will be it. Alright, so I ended up getting 18 bottles plus a little over half a gallon to save in the fridge. So last step is to cork it, and we'll be done. So the wine kit I used came with this corker, and it works really nice. So what you do is you'll soak your corks in sanitized water, first, and that helps get them a little loosened up so they can go right into the bottle. So I have those soaking, and we'll get them and cork them, and that's the end of the strawberry wine. Alright, so what we're going to do is, it's got a little spot, pop the cork in there, you line up with the top of the bottle. The only thing you need to make sure is that you don't push the cork too far down into the bottle. So I always double check it once I get it close. And you can always push it down just a little more if need be. We have it flush with the top. You're ready to store it. Let it age. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you check out part 1 of the wine video. Make sure you hit that like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.